You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 147. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm going to be touching a nerve, maybe. We are talking about entitlement to have a good time. Ouch! Indeed. Now look, I want to tackle this because I see this as being something very prevalent in many areas of our life, actually. The sense of entitlement that many of us feel around always having a good time, especially when it comes to alcohol and indulgence. Now listen, part of living a full, healthy life, and I have covered this on the podcast before, comes from accepting discomfort sometimes. We cannot expect to have a life filled with the most wonderful experiences and emotions every single second of every single day. Now, when I'm talking about this with people, and even thinking about this myself, we all tend to agree with this. But then reality sets in and we think about, having a bad time. And no one wants to have a bad time. It's why so many people I work with end up getting into the habit of using alcohol as a crutch. It was not their intent. It just became that way. And I think a lot of this is fueled by this sense of entitlement to always feel good. And this is something that really undermines our deeper fulfillment in life. In fact, it actually serves as a block. So that's what I want to talk about today. Now, the first thing I want to cover is the world we live in, right? This culture of instant gratification and fun. There is for sure a societal narrative where we live in a world that pushes us towards constant stimulation, whether that's through social media, entertainment, alcohol, food, whatever it is, right? And this desire for instant gratification. And it comes from we think we're entitled to pleasure all the time. And why not? I mean, it's everywhere. TV, booze, social media, whatever, right? We can escape our lives at any time of the day or night. Now, this sense of entitlement to a good time really peaks during holidays and weekends or celebrations, right? Where people believe they deserve, if we take it a step further, we deserve to have a good time. Just take a look around an airport at 8 a.m. All the pubs are doing a roaring trade. It's normalized to drink then. We permit it. We allow it. We're on holiday. We're off the clock, right? I remember one year, many moons ago, flying out to a Spanish island. We had to leave at something like 3 a.m. or something. But then we were drinking G&Ts on the beach at 9 a.m. Something I would never ordinarily have done. And yet I was on holiday and I deserved it. A third element of what I'm calling this culture of instant gratification and fun is there's a sense of emotional pressure. There's an emotional expectation that if we aren't having fun or if we aren't feeling great, then something's wrong with us or something's wrong with our lives. Now, I want to offer that these beliefs contribute to our patterns of overindulgence. I talk about it with alcohol, but the same thing is true of food or shopping or anything else where we're kind of just doing too much of it. But the more we do this, the more we drink, for instance, the more this removes us from understanding and accepting what's going on in our lives in that moment, and to seeing and really seeing our life for how it is, and our emotions for how they are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Second thing I want to cover today is entitlement as a barrier to responsibility. Ooh. Sounds kind of heavy, right? But I want you to think about this. Let's compare entitlement to what I'm going to call self-responsibility. And what happens is that if we think about it, if we're always feeling entitled to always having fun, then we're deflecting responsibility to our emotional well-being, right? To something outside of us. Now listen, it takes effort to be responsible. For instance, paying attention to what's in your mind, to making conscious decisions on what you want to believe and what you want to think rather than what you just habitually think. This requires effort. Our brains want to do things that don't require effort. So our brains are going to want to run away from this. And for some reason, we feel entitled that this work of maybe thinking about our thoughts differently, we feel entitled for that to be easy. We feel entitled. It's as though we're waiting for someone to come along on a horse and save us. We feel entitled to somebody doing that for us. But I would like to offer you a new thought. It's one of my faves. Here it comes. If it is to be, it's up to me. Just try that one on for size and you'll be amazed how differently you will act. Now, when talking about entitlement as a barrier to responsibility, the other way this shows up, the other problem with it is that this entitlement around feeling good can look like needing to drink or indulge when we're bored or stressed. Now, this creates a barrier to our own emotional growth and our sense of personal responsibility. Right? We don't want to feel negative emotions, even though, we kind of understand that, yes, life isn't all rainbows and daisies. But then when thinking we don't want to feel any negative emotions, society will then answer that with this sense of entitlement by giving us liquid pleasure. Right? Have this drink. You'll feel good, and you will. And as we explore this, a thought that creates a lot of entitlement, and it sounds so innocent, I used to have it all the time, is I deserve it. Now think about that. That really is all about entitlement, yeah? And when you feel entitled, if you're thinking that you're feeling entitled, what are you going to do? You're going to go and get the bottle of wine. And the more I found that I would reach for a drink, the more I would have the thought, I deserve it, and the more I would bring on this feeling of entitlement. I'd feel entitled to rewards. I'd feel entitled to it be easy. I'd feel entitled to feeling, good and rested and all the rest of it that I was able to get from the wine. What I didn't understand was what was going on behind the scenes. I didn't understand that I was actually training my brain that when it was thinking something like, I deserve it, and then bringing on that sense of entitlement, that it was thinking that was a really good thought to think, because it was maintaining this kind of culture within me of instant gratification. Now let's talk about taking responsibility for discomfort. And how I see this happening is that instead of recognizing that boredom or frustration or sadness are natural parts of life, because they are, a sense of entitlement keeps us seeking quick fixes for these emotions. Now, aside from this being something that is not ever going to work in the long term, right? Because we're going to be, if you're always drinking in response to stress, we never learn how to deal with stress, and therefore we're drinking more and more and more. The bigger question, I think, is that this kind of strategy of drinking in response to, or feeling entitled rather, to not feeling these emotions, this curtails our life. Because I really think, and if you sit and think about this, a lot of the best stuff in our life requires us to feel negative emotion as well, right? To feel the doubt and insecurity and frustration and overwhelm. Set any big goal for yourself, and you're going to feel all that negative stuff come up. Because your mind is saying, come on, let's stay safe. Why risk this? Think about just before making a big presentation, right? You probably want to run a mile. That's your brain saying, abort, this is not a good idea. And yet you step forward and you do the presentation and you feel so impressed with yourself, right? And so that's why I think if we're always feeling entitled to feel good and not feel these big emotions, it's going to keep us small. And I think I'm going to do a podcast episode on keeping and how alcohol keeps us small, but that's another time. So if you want to grow in your life, you're going to be bringing up the negative emotions. And if you don't know how to process that, you're going to be turning to alcohol, right? You're going to be turning to something else to feel good, and that's going to block you from achieving your dream. But if you take the first step of learning how to undesire alcohol and to feel your emotions, then you're going to take that skill of feeling that negative emotion, feeling that discomfort, and you're going to start to apply it to whatever you want in your life. Now, let me just give you an example, real life example of how this showed up for me around drinking, right? The sense of entitlement and how that really served as a barrier to my taking responsibility. When I was first trying to drink less, I was very angry with myself that I couldn't drink less because I was a bit of an emotional drinker then. I'd have a bad day, I'd feel stressed and I'd drink. I used to tell myself at the beginning of every day, today's going to be different. And then what would happen was I'd read some advice online, and then I kind of become a bit of a child about it, right? So I create a kind of a drink diet. That's really pretty much how I would look at it. I tried to I'm just going to stop drinking. And I was going to decide I was going to do that like a parent, like I was going to be a parent to myself. This is what you're going to do, Anna. You're going to not going to have the drink at this time. So I kind of lay it out like a parent would. And then when the evening came, I would be turned into this child. And I get so frustrated and I rebel. I would rebel against what I had decided, right? Does that sound familiar? I think, you can't tell me what to do, right? I would go into this place where I was a child, and where the diet, the drink diet, the whatever, the strategy, the approach I was trying at that particular, whatever was the flavor of the month at that time was the adult. And I was trying to rebel against the very thing I wanted, right? I see this so often in my clients. We set a drink plan and then we decide, and then we kind of rebel against it. I don't like the idea of that anymore. I used to do this, and I'd go into this place of, I want wine. I've had a bad day. I like wine. It's what I do. I'm a grown-up. It makes me feel sophisticated, right? And I kind of be like that toddler, just saying, I want chocolate. I want. Like, wah, wah. I was in this place of blame. It's not fair. I can't do this. It's not fair that she can drink what she likes and stop, and that I can't. I was feeling very sorry for myself. I was not taking responsibility. I wanted this thing outside of me. I wanted the drink diet or whatever the strategy I was following to take care of me and to make me happy and to be responsible for what I drank. But I was always the one who is responsible for what I drink. So if you see yourself rebelling against the decisions you've made for yourself, that's what's happening. It's time to check in with where you're giving their sense of responsibility. And when it changed for me was when I really stepped into responsibility, and it became, look, I'm going to do the thing I don't want to do. I kind of own it, right? I'm not going to drink the wine. I want to drink the wine, but I'm not going to. I'm going to have a glass of soda and lime instead, even if in that moment I do not feel like it. Because I am deciding, I'm looking at my long-term gain for myself instead of always looking for that same instant indulgence, that sense of entitlement. Right? So that's how entitlement and responsibility can show up. Now let's look at understanding and accepting different emotions and different emotional states. Listen, it's okay not to feel good all the time. It is normal. This is part of the human experience, although if you were to watch the TV or read any advertisements, they will suggest otherwise. But what happens is we feel entitled to be happy every day, to be drama-free. And we want to push it away and move away from it. Listen, boredom. Boredom is such a huge cue for drinking. Because lots of the time we feel entitled to be having a good time, to relax, to go to a party and not feel frustrated or bored. So be willing to be bored. Because listen, dinner with your in-laws, it might be terrible. But as soon as you're willing for that to happen, it's really never as bad as you might think. You're going to be present. You get to be present with it. You don't have this need or entitlement to sneak away from that moment, to escape it. It's just dinner with the in-laws. And the more we use alcohol as a quick way to escape or avoid our feelings, that only reinforces the entitlement mindset, becomes part of our identity. We say things like, well, I'm an introvert. I find it hard to socialize. I'm a bit socially anxious. I can't do it so well without the alcohol. We kind of make it part of who we are. But when I stopped drinking, I stopped thinking that it was a problem that I was not so socially gregarious. It's totally fine. It's all right to go out and not always have a great time. I don't have to create a reason for myself to drink. And that makes me feel so much more in control. So I want you to think about where entitlement for yourself, where to feeling great all the time, how that's showing up. And while you're thinking maybe that any sense of discomfort is bad, kind of be honest with yourself. Start to look at this and accept and understand where it's showing up. Awareness is the number one step to making a change. Now let's talk about redefining fun and fulfillment. What truly makes us happy? I want you to think about that. Shift the focus from momentary highs, like maybe drinking on holiday, I used to do that, day drinking, to a sense of long-term fulfillment. Think about where a sense of entitlement is leading you to chase short-term pleasure at the expense of long-term contentment. That's a big one. Ask, what do you really want? Just look at last week. Just do this little exercise for a moment. You can pause the podcast and do this. There's no judgment. We're just going to look at last week or last month or whenever. Look at the time you spent drinking. Now, if you could choose that time again, how would you want to spend that time? Think about why you aren't maybe going after a big dream right now. Maybe it feels so much work. I feel tired. Oh, I feel overwhelmed. I feel that a lot. It's normal. But if you're making that the reason you're not going after your dream, that's a terrible reason, because these are just emotions and you know how to feel them. If you've taught yourself, if you learn how to feel an emotion through, none of them will frighten you. That's really what the whole thing boils down to. That's why we're trying to condition your desire for alcohol and why that matters. It's not just to drink less. I mean, really, that is just the beginning. That's the surface level. It's not even to stop drinking entirely. You know me, whatever relationship with alcohol you want, I'll help you get there. But when your life gets so amazing, think about this, when your life gets so amazing because you're experiencing all of it, alcohol is going to lose its interest. I have zero desire to drink alcohol because I want to stay awake. I want to know what's happening in my life, even the bad things. I've learned that external things like alcohol or even things like holidays, right? They can bring rewards. They can feel rewarding, yes, but that's a fleeting satisfaction. True peace, true contentment, true pride in yourself comes from internal sources. Right, from growing your self-awareness, from being able to trust yourself. Listen, if you keep on drinking, you're just going to get really good at drinking. You're going to get really good at creating a sense of, a surface level sense of pleasure, a sense of feeling entitled to have a good time, a sense of feeling entitled to not having these negative emotions, when that is the opposite to creating a full and fulfilled life. So how do you do that? How do we stop the entitlement mindset? Well, first you need to build emotional resilience to move away from this kind of quick fix culture. So ask these questions to yourself. Are you willing to make the effort to pay attention and notice your drinking patterns? Are you willing to notice the impact and effect of those patterns? Are you willing to look at why you drink? Are you willing to decide if you want to continue to do this? Want to continue down the same old path? Or are you willing to deliberately think something different? I mean, I really encourage you to explore this in your life. Maybe look at some areas where you're placing the blame and not taking responsibility in your life for the negative things that are happening. Right? What are you teaching your brain that you are entitled to? Ooh, that's a good one. And if all you're teaching your brain is that you're entitled to dopamine, right? Because really that's when we say I like wine, we're saying I like dopamine. Then the question for you is, do you want to show your brain a different way? Do you want to teach yourself something different? Or do you just want to stay thinking, yeah, I like dopamine? And when you start to shift your focus from just papering over and trying to feel good and entitled to feeling good, to really creating a sense of self-care and growth, I think real personal growth, that's when you're going to be willing to manage yourself and manage your mind. You're not going to be dependent on anyone else or any other substance like the wine for how you think, feel, and act. And I want you to consider what would happen if you really learned how to feel these emotions and to take the steps even when you didn't feel like it. How would that change your life? What different results would you get? You'd start to replace the entitlement mindset with one that embraces things like personal responsibility, growth, and really the richness of emotional feelings. To do this, I want you to start asking, what do you really want? Right? Just start small. So in summary, the things I want you to take away today are, Think about the culture of instant gratification and how it feeds our entitlement mindset, right, to feeling good all the time. Think about the importance of accepting and fully accepting discomfort and taking responsibility for your emotional well-being. And then to look at how you redefine what fun and fulfillment truly looks like without needing to rely on alcohol or quick rewards. So that's what we want to leave you with today. Remember, because life isn't about always feeling good all the time. I really believe that. It's about living fully, embracing our emotion, taking responsibility for our choices. And if you feel that alcohol is blocking you from this, when you did the exercise just now about how you would rather have spent the past week if it hadn't been drinking, I want you to look at that other alternate reality and know that that is possible for you. This is what I do. I work with people and I would help you transform your relationship with alcohol to whatever that means for you, even if it seems impossible right now. And it is fun and fulfilling. So all of the things I've spoken about today, about moving away from feeling entitled to having a good time, to growth and personal responsibility and feeling pride in yourself, those are the gifts that you get along the way as we coach together. We work together one-on-one to completely change your relationship with alcohol. To get that for yourself, go to 90dayslater.co and click the book a call button. This will get you on my calendar. The first call is free, but you will leave, whether you decide to work with me or not, you will leave knowing in full and in detail what it will take to completely change your relationship with alcohol. It is so good. All right, I will see you next week.